Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Dr. Dennis Becker, and I'm joined by my colleague, Robin Golinski. And you know, of course, since you've been here before, that we are talking about manipulation. Isn't that fun? Well, not so much, especially for those of you who have been targeted by it. And we have a special guest with us today. I am Dr. Dennis Becker, and joining me as my colleague, as always, is Robin Golinski. Robin, you may say hello, please.
Hello, please.
There you go. That's my Robin. Well, seriously though, folks, we're trying to have a little bit of fun with this, but I'm telling you, we understand that manipulation is nothing to laugh about. It's not fun. And we have a special guest with us today who has agreed to join us and share some of the manipulation he has been targeted by and victim of, really. But at any rate, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. So say hello to everybody, and everybody say hello to Andrew. Hello there.
Hello, thank you for having me on today.
Oh.
Appreciate it. I wish it was, we were talking about, skateboards or something, but this is,
you never know what.
So
A lot of things come up in our conversation. So if skateboards are part of it, they'll come up. It's perfectly okay. We're here to help people who are dealing with this thing called manipulation. And we'll ask you lots of questions and you tell us what kind of things is helpful and whatever comes to your mind. I'm sure our listeners will be glad to hear it. So, Robin, you want to start us off? Say hello to Andrew. You haven't met him yet.
Yes. Hello, Andrew.
hello.
Andrew, so this is all about helping other people so they can avoid becoming a target. I guess my question for you is, I don't know, maybe you've had more than one person target you, but if you could give us a little background on maybe when you realized you were being manipulated and how you realized that would be helpful.
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I think, identifying these things is hard, especially in our own subjective experience. It's hard to, fully understand in terms of a barometer, like, what we're experiencing, and if that's, just something in our own experience that's making us feel a certain way, or if that's in fact objectively what's happening. So that's something that I struggled with, having a pretty varied psychological experience with, a very featured psyche, as many of us do. But I always kind of thought, I think, that the problem was me, or I thought, and the problem is me a lot of times in life. But I think when it comes to manipulative individuals specifically, and those who might be sort of bad actors in this capacity, that it's hard to suss out, what's kind of your own psychological landscape, that you just need to navigate and maybe control or improve, et cetera. And then what is in fact something that's sort of being done to you, and it's maybe a little bit more, divisive or heinous or just kind of, pernicious, however you want to describe it. So
Well,
for me,
typically, and just to interject there, I want to see, typically that happens when you're a child. It's very much more difficult to suss it out, as you said. What would you say? Would you be able to come up with maybe your earliest memory of when you had an inkling that it wasn't you?
Yeah, so both my parents are high-level manipulators, and but my mother probably the lower of the two in terms of skill set. But
I'd love to hear how you measured that, but that's another episode. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I can explain it actually pretty clearly. And the thing that happens there, and the thing that continues to happen even in adulthood, it's funny how the sort of substructure of the pattern doesn't really change. There might be, new flourishes and nuances and things they pick up along the way, but or new material that they can use. But the sort of overall architecture of it is pretty much the same. So with my mother, it was a thing of, oh, that hurts me, as your, it hurts your mom when you do that, and it's like, I'm being a kid. Like, whatever I do is independent. I'm a kid. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm allowed to make mistakes, supposedly. But somehow they hook on their emotional well-being to like your behavior as a child. And that was the earliest thing. It's like or to sort of give an overarching example of that I think is used a lot in the zeitgeist, that I think is total BS, is that idea of, let's use like alcoholism or drug abuse or something like that, something I have some experience with as well, unfortunately. But like, let's just say that you're abusing alcohol or drugs, and someone comes in and says, it really hurts us when you do that. It's just kind of like a, thanks, but no thanks. Like, and on a basic level, I can understand that it would be hurtful, but that's like my thing to work out. That's not for you to use as a chip to kind of hold over my head. So and it's just completely ineffective. Like, I can say that someone, if you're engaging in a behavior that's self-destructive, and someone comes in and just says, it really hurts me when you do that. It's like, well, okay, then control your own, internal environment and don't be hurt. Or I can understand if you come to me and you say, look, this is how, or, it's like a genuine explanation. And so much of this happens in nuance, but like, if my mom were like, look, I was driving the other day and I just, all of a sudden it was like I couldn't even focus on the road, and thought I was going to get in a car accident because I was so worried about you or something like that. It's like, okay, well, God, yeah, of course I don't want to make people that care about me upset. That's kind of one flavor of it. But when somebody is being overly dramatic or abusing a certain element of that, or just taking it too far, it becomes unhelpful. And you start to think that everything's a Potemkin village. You start thinking everything's false. It's like the boy who cried wolf. You just start, they say that over and over and over and over again, and you're like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. Well, you're still alive and you're still here, so clearly it's not, it's not killing you. This is just killing me every time you get, it's like.
Well, Andrew, you bring up a really interesting point, which I'm thinking deeply about what you just said, because there's people genuinely in the world who are hurt by someone's behavior and say, hey, it really hurts me when you do this. But I think what you're describing that's different than a genuine expression of that is an exploitation of your empathy, of knowing that you're an empathic individual, so that if I make you feel responsible for me, and you've reached a tipping point with that, it sounds like.
So you said it in a much more eloquent way, and I described it in a much more frustrated, sort of emotional way, which is, with eye rolling and and that's important. And that's correct. And I think it's important to note that, like, these things, often the manipulator's tactic, and this is a huge thread that I've experienced, is it's always the abuse of something that's initially supposed to be kind of like a good thing. It's the perversion, or, of course, the cat's trying to get out. It's the abuse or perversion, or the changing of something, maybe by degree, etc., of something that is supposed to be helpful, and that is considered a legitimate sort of idea, or a legitimate emotion or concern, or whatever you want to say. and when it becomes that, then it's something that's completely it's like a cancer, it's something that's very malignant in the relationship.
Well, and how is somebody like you, now you're an adult, and I'm sure this is a third rail, but how is somebody like you to navigate and discern genuine caring from another human being when you've been exploited so much in that department, so that you may have a filter that every time you hear somebody's upset or hurt by you, you can't even believe that that's true because of
Yeah, no, you don't. You live alone in your 40s and you abuse drugs and alcohol. That's what you do, because you don't
Oh,
know.
we're here to help people, Andrew.
Yeah, no, well, you never, I mean, I never, so for me, I never know to this day. I started working in a restaurant just to be around people because I've been in just solitude basically since 2020. I don't really have any cohorts or work in an office or anything like that in my real estate career. So and I find I have no idea what people are. I'm highly mistrusting of people, and I have no idea what their motivations are. I used to think I was a good judge of character, and now the older I get, just the more and more confused and I have no idea what if people are being helpful, if they're being and this is probably a different topic, but if they're trustworthy, if they like me, if they don't, I have no concept of
Confusing
that anymore.
But you are, you are navigating. Sounds like you're in process and taking a step back and assessing your perfect age for that, frankly. This is what you do when I can say that I'm almost 60, but this is what you do. You step back, assess, you're about the halfway point in your life. How do I want the second half to go? And you got to develop the skill. You're almost a newborn in that skill.
Yeah. That's right.
But a very good beginning, I might say, Andrew, a very good beginning. The very fact that you're able to talk to others about this is an extremely good beginning, because you recognize that you've been a target of this manipulative behavior for many, many years. And as Robin was mentioning, sounds like it started in your childhood and continues on through adulthood. You still get the feeling you're a target of manipulators today?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yes, I do. The difference is that now I can just notice it and then put distance between myself and that person.
Good.
That's huge.
That's very good.
That's absolutely huge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the toughest things to do, because the whole objective for manipulators is to control you or anybody, to control us. They want to control our behavior, our emotions. And if you're able to recognize, A, that there is a manipulator in your life, and B, that you're able to put distance between you and that other person, that's huge, Andrew.
That means you're over the worst of it. I'll tell you that. And anybody who's listening, that's when you're through the worst of it, even though it may not feel like you're through the worst of it. The fact that you can put the distance there, you can put a name to it, and you can see the signs of it. Now, you may feel like, well, it doesn't feel like progress because I still don't maybe have who I want or what I want in my life, but you are on your way, and you can't unknow what you know. So it's one good thing about this is when you do pop out, this is why anybody who's read our book or done the exercises in the book, once you pop out with the knowing, you can't go backwards. It's impossible. You'd have to just really, really gaslight yourself to go backwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good feeling. You're right. I mean, well, not a good feeling, but it's at least a hopeful,
Progress.
beginning.
Yeah, it is progress. It's progress, and it should be a good feeling. You should congratulate yourself for being aware, not only that, but recognizing who and when. Now, the how manipulators work, that's tricky, how they do it, because they're very slick. Manipulators are very smart, they're very slick, and they're looking for nothing other than to control you or your emotions. So the very fact that you're aware of it now, that's a huge plus. Congratulations.
I think it's a lifetime too, because, I still to this day have to keep myself in check, because I can lean on the side, and I'd rather, and I tell people, if you're going to pick a side, lean on the side of paranoia. It's safer, but I do have to keep it in check. The skepticism, the doubt,
Mhm.
the ulterior motives that, are they there? Are they not there? That's where you really have to look for evidence and patterns and keep yourself in check.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, you trust no one and you have no
Yeah.
friends.
Right.
And one of the goals of the work that Robin and I have been doing and continue to do is to, once you become aware, to give you techniques to protect yourself when those manipulative tactics come towards you. So being aware, identifying a manipulator, very good, very positive. And now you'll learn the techniques that work for you. And, in the book we wrote, we came up with a whole bunch of them. There's 24 or 5 of them that we talk about specifically, but there may be 24 or 5 more that you will know that will work in your life and with your specific manipulator. But man, I'm telling you, congratulations for being aware, identifying, and now it's going to be practicing to keep that person or persons at bay. But believe me, after a while, they don't want to mess with you because they like it easy. When you
Right.
start standing up for yourself and speaking out, basically they say, "Oh, that's enough. I got to find an easier target." So
Yeah.
you're in the right track, man.
So what strategies have you come up with, Andrew, to try to identify these manipulative people sooner rather than later?
Yeah. Well, so the noticing of it is a bit easier now for me. That's something that stems from awareness, as you were saying, Dennis. That's definitely a big positive. But it's much easier to identify the patterning and to see kind of what they're all about. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, my last 2 romantic relationships have been with wretched manipulators.
Oh
And
my
I
goodness.
was going to ask you about
I-
that.
Oh
and
my.
parents, and so I'm around a lot of them.
Oh boy.
Well, let me pause you there. So
Wow.
2 past romantic relationships. One, okay, I have a
Yeah.
couple of questions for you. One is, do you know why you attracted them? Any behaviors that you're doing that attract them? And the other question I have for you is, between the 2 of them, did you learn something that you applied to the second one, or was it really just a repeat of the first one?
It was actually it got even worse from the first to the second.
Oh,
It was
geez.
total repeat. It was also unexpected. So let me back that up a little bit though, because a lot of times life, it doesn't happen in those sort of what they describe in, I think, psychology is like saccades, which are like, frames, like, hey, look at
Buckets.
this, it's
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
no, it's your whole life happening. I
No,
mean,
it's
with
much
me,
messier.
yeah,
Right.
and it's not like I'm here with 3 kids and working 2 jobs and all that kind of stuff. So in a way, I don't have a big excuse. But okay, well, let me say this. When I met the second one, I had just come off of, like we all did, a year of solitude from COVID in 2020. And I had 0 substances. I hadn't had anything to drink or any kind of drugs or anything. And drugs, I never been like a drug addict or anything. I would just use them like recreationally at concerts and stuff. But they alter your experience,
Yeah.
perspectives and stuff. And you sort of bring that with you into other parts of life, for better or for worse. And at the time, I had 0 I had 0 drugs in my system. I had 0 alcohol. I was sober when I met the person. I had been meditating a lot. I had been doing everything within my powers, just sitting in my apartment or my house in Boston to
Clear your mind.
clear my mind and to be on the right path.
Mhm.
And I was trying to meet people romantically, and I was trying to meet people just in life and not make it,
Mhm.
so I'm going to get on, social media or Tinder or dating apps or whatever. And I thought, just by being in this like good life pattern, I'm likely
Mhm.
going to um I'm likely going to arrive in a good place, you know, and
Mhm.
meet somebody who's well, I mean, and this might be kind of a little bit of a pessimistic thing. I don't really even want to say this on the podcast, but I was kind of proven wrong there. So, I mean, it doesn't, you know,
Well,
law of attraction. I mean, I don't know. I was completely sober. I saw a nice lady. I commented on her. She had beautiful clothes that were really stylish, and to sort of more get into what the, you know, so I didn't see any like, you know, thing that my life felt good. My life felt pretty well put together. Like I had gone through COVID and made some good financial choices to get through it, and, you know, was really in a good spot. And I had the main manipulator who was in my life out of my life. So
Mhm.
the everything was going really well. And I guess the message here, and I'll get more into it, but I guess the message would be you're never 100% out of the woods. Like, you always have to be vigilant. Like, you always have to keep your eye out. I mean, in retrospect, I was probably still performing a lot of behaviors that were deeply ingrained in my psyche that I wasn't aware of I wasn't aware of how destructive those were. Like, one of them is being, you know, just very egoic and very much of a I'm a guy out on my own island making my stuff's cool. My music is the best. My style's the most hippest and outrageous, and you haven't heard of it. And I do the most esoteric things, and I'm so cool, and you know, are not. You know, those
Oh
types of
boy.
mindsets.
Yeah.
And what I found is that when I met this one particular person, she had all of this stuff, like she had the coolest like clothes and like silk headscarves and stuff that were, and like I went over to her apartment for the first time, and she was playing like Quincy Jones, rip, and like old school like Eddie Harris on saxophone, and I was like, oh, this is like, you couldn't even it. So I guess the trap was that, oh, this person has this life with all these things in it, with all these elements that are like really incredibly cool and beautiful and spectacular. And then she turned out to be just this really wretched person. And hopefully she's, you
Hmm.
know, better. And then I was wretched in
Hmm.
response, and we ended up doing tons of drugs, and the whole thing was a mess, was a complete
okay,
mess.
but Andrew,
Yeah.
this so great. The reason why is what you said in there is you took responsibility for the deep energy pattern, mindset, attitude that you had was like a magnet.
Yeah.
So all the stuff that you worked on was great, you know, being healthy and clean and meditating and all that, but you still hadn't really dug deep into the mindset
Right.
necessarily. And so all that other stuff was my sister would say frosting a turd. I know Dennis like
Oh
that
my
because
goodness. Oh,
he's
Yeah.
so
no,
he's so
no.
lovely.
Yeah.
He never says things like that.
Oh
But
boy.
you know what I mean? Like you didn't do that part of it. So now you see this perfect. I mean, this is a really valuable lesson, I think, for people because everything
Mm.
aligned, her looks, her hobbies, her this, her that. It just seemed like a dream come true. And then the other shoe dropped.
Right.
Mhm.
And even though that may have felt like going backwards for you, I really believe it was going forward for you. And the reason I
Absolutely.
believe that is because of the way you're able to talk about it.
Yes. Yes. Recognize.
And yes, and I, yes, period.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
well, and so, but I just want to get this out before I forget, and I don't
Yes, I
cut you
understand.
off, but we'll go. But one of the things I'm recognizing now is that it is also taking the responsibility, because for a while I just downloaded the program of, hey, oh, this is what happens to me. You know, this is what
Yes,
happens. Bad things
this is
happen to
what I
Mm.
me. I'm
deserve.
like
This is,
Justine and Marquis de
Mm.
Sade, like, you know,
Oh boy.
everywhere I
I'm
go, I
life's
get abused.
punching bag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
No,
and
no.
so I definitely adopted that And now I'm like, actually, had I just been like more like normal guys or whatever, or just more of an even keeled person, or just more of a like just more of a balanced person, I would have said, wow, this is some extreme behavior. I'm going to put some distance between it. Maybe I'll go back. Maybe I'll contribute to it. I'm kind of contributing to this too. I probably really need to pull the ripcord. So that there was that moment was out there for me at one point, but it was my responsibility to extricate myself from the relationship. Like, I've had enough experience with craziness in my life
I bet.
since day one.
But she probably didn't want to believe it because of her great taste in music and clothing.
Right. And right.
I get that.
Right. And so it's like, oh, but I'm familiar enough with that patterning to be able to take the blinders off and say, hey, you're clearly into this. And you know, for her sake too, like, I don't think people are wholly good or evil or whatever. So I definitely contributed to her acting even worse, and me. It was just a negative feedback loop for both of us.
Oh, for sure.
So it's not, you know, I'm just saying I'm guilty there. It's not like, oh,
no, but that's why I say you're progressing and you're going forward. And also I want to bring up another thing, because you're a 41-year-old male, and I know a lot of 50 something, 60 something, 70 something females that have a similar mindset, in that they're staying in the bad relationship because they don't believe they could ever attract anybody else. So I'm stuck with it.
Right.
It's a similar mindset, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't really, I'm not going to deserve anything better. I'm fat, I'm old, I'm not so attractive. I better just make do with what I've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frightening thought, but there's a lot of that thinking out there.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage to pull a ripcord. A lot of courage. And you did it. And I assume you're single now.
Oh, yeah.
And hoping that the next one will have no cray, right?
Right. And so the, you know, to that point, I mean, one of the things is to try to is try to focus on the parts of the personality that are one, going to be not self-destructive, like just in my own right, like just for me on my own, but then to also enhance those, you know, to get that more out into the world with the relationships and connections that we do bring in, you know. That's the one where I don't have the skill set, you know. I can comfortably say I'm completely lost. I have no idea what it means to be, you know, to take a genuine interest in others. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but most of the time I'm like, how can I avoid everybody here, you know? Like,
yeah, I get why you're what do they call it? Twice shy, what's that phrase? I forget. Gun shy. I don't know. You know, that you've had some thumpings, but what I see listening to you, and Dennis, you can chime in if you don't agree, but I see progress. I really believe this last one was a powerful lesson. And I think your takeaways are going to propel you to the best fit for you. That's going to be comfortable. That's going to be partnership. That's going to, you know, but watch your neuro-linguistic programming with saying, I feel lost. Just say something, because what that does is it reinforces that in your mind. Just say, I'm learning.
yeah.
I'm not necessarily adept at spotting it immediately, but I'm better than I was, and you are. And then, you know, hopefully you'll spot it on that first meeting. That's ideal. But if not, how about the second date? You know, that's better than moving in with someone and having children with them and then connecting the dots.
Right. Yeah, you're kind of at the point where if we put it in a different way, you're kind of at the point where you're about to graduate from grad school. Okay. You've learned a lot. You've had some bumps and some scrapes and some horrible things, and you're able now to sit and describe them, talk about them, analyze them, figure out what they did in your life, what they did to you. Now, at age 41, You're at the beginning. You've got your PhD now in manipulation. You've recognized it. Now, what you have to do is put all of that into action, as Robin was saying, not give things away, not give up, not there's nobody in my life. There's a lot of people in your life, and you will meet more. And somewhere along the line, someone will hit you in a way that's going to feel different, and you'll be able to pursue it because you have learned a lot. As you were talking, I'm thinking about a man that I know who didn't marry until he was 41,
Mhm.
sort of meandered around, didn't do much of anything. Now, he's a very successful guy, got 3 children and a wife and living very happily, but it took him a while to get it
Yeah.
together. He just didn't know. He wandered around for a while. And you've been bumped around and you've had a lot of experience so that you now can look at the black and blue marks and say, oh, I'm not doing that again. Nope,
Mhm.
nope, nope, not doing that again. That's what it takes.
Well, not only
Manipulators are
that,
very
but
smart. They,
Dennis is right, but not only that, the courage you have to share this and the
oh, yeah.
authenticity from a male, if I may
Oh,
speak about your genders, the two of you,
Mhm.
men aren't very often eager to share their mistakes,
mhm.
their emotional vulnerability, they aren't. And
Mhm.
I think that puts you in the top 1% of good catches out there. So I think you have more going for you than you realize. And I know that we're at time now, but I know that everything you shared here is going to help people enormously who are
Okay.
in your boat. We need to hear more from men because I often am very advocate of the female perspective, but there
You
are a
look at
lot
the
of
things, you look, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Robin, but Andrew, look at the things that we haven't talked about any of those, but look at the things that there must be many things that you have done in life that are very positive, whether it's travel or education or work. There must be things that we haven't talked about that you can be proud of, that you are glad you went through, that many people couldn't have done that, and you did it. There are a lot of things that you bring to a relationship that have not yet been able to be exposed because you've been in a manipulative relationship. Manipulators don't want you to show
they
that stuff.
breathe the freaking life and they
Oh,
bleed the life out of you. Not breathe,
oh,
bleed the
Yeah.
life out of you. They
they're
drain your soul.
vampires.
They take credit for all your
Yeah,
success
yeah.
and they diminish you simultaneously.
Well, that's why I was saying one of the best things that you shared with us is that you're aware. This
Yeah.
is a huge step that you're
Yeah.
aware and that being able to step away from that manipulator or those types of manipulators. Now, take those things that you have done in your life that you are positive about, that you're glad you did, that you can, I don't say brag, but that you can talk about that will interest other people who have those same kind of interests. You will attract that kind of a person. You now know what kind of a person you don't want to attract, the kind of behaviors, the kind of attitudes, the kind of comments, the kind of things that they do and they do with you, for you, to you. You've had a you've had
Yeah.
an education, my friend.
You have
The
a
no,
plethora.
and the number one thing I would say to someone who is, maybe less far along, again, fortunately or unfortunately, but maybe who's seeking to avoid this kind of trap
Yeah.
is it always starts with the good.
Oh,
And
sure.
that's
Oh,
the
hell
most difficult
yeah.
part. I'm sure that's been reiterated time and
Oh,
time
it's true.
again.
It's so true.
Oh, it's a good point.
It
It's a
always starts with the high. It's
Oh,
never going
the
to be like,
rainbows, the
oh, this person.
unicorns.
It's
Yeah.
not the guy or the girl who, well, she seemed a little sinister, he seemed a little sinister, but I kind
No
of liked
way.
it. No, it's
Yeah.
never that.
Oh,
That's
no.
just the bad boy or the bad girl.
Yeah.
No, they're like, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
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 person,
Yes.
Yeah.
or this
Charismatic,
situation,
attractive.
amazing. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and but there will definitely be a flare up.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always a
Yeah.
flare up. And
Yeah.
and
Well, you turn that beautiful rock over and there's nothing
yeah,
but slugs and yeah.
yeah.
And one last thing that I'll share with you as a manipulative tactic that people don't often talk about, but that you may have experienced, or you may be ripe for it, which is why I'm bringing it up. The tactic is called hurt and rescue,
Oh yeah.
where they come in and either they have caused or they see you having been hurt, or they give you a hurt. And right, oh, I can take it. Oh, no worry. Here, come with me. Do this. Do what I say. And it makes it feel like they're rescuing you. You've
Mm.
been through a lot. So be very careful that you don't get caught by the tactic called hurt and rescue. Think more about yourself, the positive things you have to bring to a relationship. It's going to happen. It will come.
Well, thank you for
you.
sharing all of that, Andrew. Really awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's
And,
great. And Robin's right. Men don't usually share. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
it's a
know.
pleasure. Thank you.
But this new generation's much better than,
Yeah, it's
much more evolved, which is a good
that's
thing.
true.
So I want to thank everybody for listening. We're going to wrap this up right now.
Yeah.
You can follow Dennis and I and find all of our books and our podcasts and all the stuff at Outwit in Real Time. And thank you to Andrew for your time today. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for
Thank you.
listening. Bye.